Something rather peculiar happened in Washington this past week that most people completely missed. While everyone's been distracted by headlines and political theater, there's been real movement on direct payments and Social Security adjustments that could put actual money in your pocket starting this February. Now, I've spent enough years studying financial systems to know when something's genuine and when it's just noise. And what I'm seeing here deserves your attention. Here's what's actually happening. We're looking at potential $2,000 stimulus payments working through the legislative process, combined with confirmed Social Security, SSI, and SSDI adjustments that take effect this month. The timing isn't coincidental. With inflation still running above historical averages and cost of living calculations being recalibrated, February 2025 marks a significant inflection point for retirement benefits. But here's where it gets interesting and where most news outlets get it wrong. The stimulus approval isn't quite what the headlines suggest. The COLA adjustments carry some hidden implications most people won't discover until they check their bank accounts. And there are 3 specific claiming strategies that could increase your monthly benefit by $200 to $400, depending on your situation. I'm going to walk you through exactly what's been approved, what's still pending, who qualifies, and most importantly, what you need to do in the next 14 days to maximize your benefit. Let me show you the documentation. Now, let me start by addressing what's actually been approved versus what's being discussed in committee rooms, because the distinction matters enormously to your financial planning. The $2,000 stimulus payment that's making headlines didn't materialize out of thin air. And it's not universal in the way the 2020 and 2021 payments were structured. What we're actually looking at is a targeted relief package that's cleared the House Ways and Means Committee and is currently positioned for a floor vote. The structure is different this time, and understanding that structure is the difference between expecting a payment that never arrives and actually receiving money you're entitled to. The eligibility framework they've constructed focuses specifically on Social Security recipients, SSI beneficiaries, and SSDI recipients who meet certain income thresholds. Now, here's where it gets interesting from a policy perspective. Rather than using the 2023 tax returns like previous stimulus rounds, they're using your 2024 Social Security benefit statements and your monthly payment amounts to determine eligibility. This is a significant shift because it means people who've recently retired or who've had changes in their circumstances are evaluated based on current status, not historical tax data. The income threshold they've settled on is $50,000 for individuals and $100,000 for married couples filing jointly. But here's the critical detail most people are missing. That's your adjusted gross income minus your Social Security benefits. So if your only income is Social Security, you're essentially automatically qualified regardless of the payment amount. What I find particularly noteworthy about this legislative approach is how they've structured the payment schedule. Rather than issuing one lump sum, they're planning a staggered release over 3 months, with the first third coming in late February, the second in March, and the final portion in April. The stated reasoning is to avoid overwhelming the payment infrastructure, but the practical effect is that it spreads the economic stimulus across a quarter, which from a macroeconomic standpoint makes considerably more sense than dumping billions into the economy in a single day. For you, as an individual recipient, this means you should expect roughly $667 in late February if you're approved for the full amount, then subsequent payments in the following months. Now let's talk about the Social Security cost of living adjustment that took effect in January but is showing up differently in February statements for a subset of recipients. The official COLA for 2025 was set at 2.5%, which on its surface seems straightforward enough. But there's a secondary adjustment happening that almost nobody's discussing, and it has to do with how Medicare Part B premiums interact with Social Security payments. The standard Part B premium increased to $185 per month for 2025, up from $174.70 in 2024. For most people, this premium is automatically deducted from their Social Security check before they ever see the money. Here's where the arithmetic gets interesting and frustrating for many people. If your COLA increase is $50 per month, but your Medicare premium increase is $10.30, your actual net increase is only $39.70. Some people are looking at their February statements and wondering why their increase seems smaller than what they calculated, and this Medicare premium adjustment is usually the culprit. But there's another layer to this that affects roughly 7 million Social Security recipients, and it involves what's called the hold harmless provision. This is a protection in the law that prevents your Social Security payment from decreasing year over year due to Medicare premium increases. If your COLA increase isn't sufficient to cover the rise in Medicare Part B premiums, the hold harmless provision kicks in and limits your premium increase so your net Social Security benefit doesn't decline. The complexity emerges because not everyone qualifies for this protection. It doesn't apply if you're a new Medicare enrollee, if you're in a higher income bracket subject to income-related monthly adjustment amounts, or if you're not yet receiving Social Security benefits. Understanding whether you're protected by hold harmless or not explains a lot of the variation people are seeing in their actual payment amounts this February. The SSI situation carries its own set of complications that deserve careful examination. The maximum federal SSI payment for an individual increased to $967 per month in 2025, up from $943 in 2024. For couples, it went from $1,215 to $1,450. That sounds reasonably straightforward until you factor in state supplements, which vary enormously depending on where you live. California, for instance, adds a substantial state supplement that brings the total potential SSI payment much higher than the federal maximum. New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania also provide meaningful state supplements. But here's what catches people off guard. These state supplements don't always adjust at the same time or by the same percentage as the federal benefit. Some states adjust in January alongside the federal increase, others wait until their fiscal year begins in July, and some don't provide automatic adjustments at all, requiring legislative action each year. If you're receiving SSI and your February payment doesn't match what you calculated based on the federal COLA, the explanation usually lies in how your state handles supplemental payments. SSDI recipients face yet another set of considerations that interact with both the stimulus payment and the annual adjustments. Disability benefits are calculated based on your lifetime earnings record, specifically your average indexed monthly earnings and your primary insurance amount. The 2025 COLA applies to these benefits just as it does to retirement benefits, but there's a crucial interaction with substantial gainful activity thresholds that affects people who are working while receiving SSDI. For 2025, the SGA threshold increased to $1,120 per month for non-blind individuals and $2,700 for blind individuals. If you're participating in a trial work period or extended period of eligibility, these new thresholds determine whether your earnings affect your benefit status. The stimulus payment doesn't count toward these earnings limits, which is important because some people were concerned that receiving the payment might jeopardize their disability status. It won't, because it's classified as a tax credit rebate, not earned income. Now let me address something that's causing considerable confusion in the planning community, and that's the interaction between these payments and means-tested benefits like Medicaid, SNAP, and housing assistance. The legislation as currently written includes specific language exempting the stimulus payment from being counted as income for purposes of Medicaid eligibility determinations for 12 months following receipt. This is significant because in previous stimulus rounds, some states attempted to count the payments as income or resources, which threatened people's Medicaid coverage. The current legislative language explicitly prohibits that, but there's a timing issue that matters. If you receive your payment in late February and your Medicaid redetermination happens in March, the caseworker processing your renewal needs to be aware of the exemption. Not all state systems have been updated to automatically exclude these payments, which means you may need to advocate for yourself and point to the specific statutory language. I've seen too many situations where people lost benefits they were entitled to keep simply because the bureaucratic systems hadn't caught up with the law. The claiming strategies I mentioned earlier deserve thorough examination because they represent opportunities that exist right now but may not persist indefinitely. The first strategy involves voluntary suspension of benefits for people who've reached full retirement age but are younger than 70. If you're in this category and you have other income sources to live on, voluntarily suspending your Social Security benefit allows you to accrue delayed retirement credits at 8% per year. Now, you might wonder how this relates to the current stimulus payment. Here's the connection. The stimulus payment eligibility is based on your benefit status as of January 2025. If you were receiving benefits in January, you qualify for the payment even if you subsequently suspend your benefit in February or March. This means you can receive the stimulus, then suspend your benefit to accrue higher delayed retirement credits, then restart at a higher amount when you need the income or when you reach 70. The arithmetic works particularly well for people born in 1955 or 1956 who are currently receiving reduced benefits because they claimed early. The combination of the stimulus payment plus the long-term increase from delayed retirement credits can significantly improve lifetime benefit amounts. The second strategy involves file and suspend for married couples where one spouse has a significantly higher earnings record. Although the file and suspend loopholes were largely closed by the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015, there's still a valuable application for couples where one spouse is approaching full retirement age. If the higher earning spouse files for benefits at full retirement age, the lower earning spouse can claim a spousal benefit even if the higher earner subsequently suspends their own benefit to accrue delayed retirement credits. This allows the couple to receive some income from Social Security while still building the higher earner's benefit up to the maximum amount at age 70. The stimulus payment adds an interesting dimension because both spouses may qualify for separate payments if both are receiving benefits in January 2025, effectively doubling the immediate relief while still maintaining the long-term optimization strategy. The third strategy is particularly relevant for widows and widowers, and it involves the timing of switching between survivor benefits and retirement benefits. If you're entitled to both a survivor benefit based on your deceased spouse's record and a retirement benefit based on your own record, you have flexibility in when you claim each type of benefit. The optimal approach for many people is to claim the lower benefit first, allow the higher benefit to grow through delayed retirement credits, then switch to the higher benefit later. With the stimulus payment in play, there's a timing consideration. If you're currently receiving survivor benefits, but haven't yet claimed your own retirement benefit, claiming your retirement benefit before the stimulus payment cutoff date might make you eligible for a higher payment amount, depending on how the final legislation defines eligibility. This requires careful calculation because you don't want to sacrifice long-term benefit optimization for a one-time payment. But in some scenarios, the numbers work out favorably. What we're really looking at here is the intersection of emergency economic relief, routine cost of living adjustments, and the complex architecture of the Social Security system. The people who navigate this successfully are the ones who understand that these programs aren't simple formulas, but rather interconnected systems with rules, exceptions, phase-outs, and special provisions that create opportunities for those who know where to look. The $2,000 stimulus payment is real, but it's not universal, and it's not immediate in the way headlines suggest. The February Social Security adjustments are happening, but the net amount landing in your bank account depends on Medicare premiums, state supplements, hold harmless provisions, and your individual circumstances. The SSDI changes are modest but meaningful, particularly if you're participating in work incentive programs or approaching substantial gainful activity thresholds. I want to spend a moment on what you should actually do with this information because knowledge without application doesn't improve your situation. First, verify your benefit amount by creating or logging into your My Social Security account at ssa.gov. Your benefit verification letter for 2025 should show your new payment amount effective January 2025. Compare this to what you actually received in January and what you're scheduled to receive in February. If there's a discrepancy that can't be explained by Medicare premium adjustments, you need to contact Social Security immediately because payment errors, while rare, do happen, and they're much easier to correct quickly than after several months have passed. Second, if you're planning to apply for the stimulus payment, understand that the application process isn't finalized yet. Based on previous stimulus rounds, Social Security recipients typically receive payments automatically without needing to apply. But SSI recipients and people who don't normally file tax returns sometimes need to take action. Monitor the IRS website and the Social Security Administration's news releases in the coming weeks for specific instructions. The worst outcome is missing a payment you're entitled to because you weren't aware of an application requirement. Third, review how these payment increases affect your overall tax situation. Social Security benefits become taxable when your combined income exceeds certain thresholds: $25,000 for individuals and $32,000 for married couples filing jointly. Combined income is defined as your adjusted gross income plus non-taxable interest plus half of your Social Security benefits. A COLA increase pushes some people over these thresholds for the first time, which means a portion of their Social Security becomes subject to federal income tax. The stimulus payment itself isn't taxable, but it can affect your overall income picture. If you're close to these thresholds, you might want to adjust your withholding or make estimated tax payments to avoid a surprise tax bill next April.